I had an interesting conversation with a defense attorney who worked at the prestigious firm of Quinn Emanuel. You may know the firm. It represents some of those high-profile people in the country. And he was speaking with me about a real estate developer that was facing some challenges with the criminal justice system. And he reached out with some questions about what the guy could do to position himself to get out of prison at the earliest possible time. That is a very big question. And it's a big question because there are so many unknowns in the process. When he asked me the question, he was kind of cagey because apparently this guy is very well known and doesn't want his name to get out there yet. But he's looking for solutions to navigate the path. And of course, a defense attorney is going to focus on the judicial aspects. Hopefully, that defense attorney is going to fight valiantly to get the best possible outcome. But for the individual who is going inside, or potentially going inside, there is a whole parade of problems that await him. First, the sentencing is the first part, but depending on where he is, at which stage of the journey, there are steps that he should be taking. And those steps are not going to be the same for everybody. It would all start with defining what does success mean for you as an individual when you're going into this crisis. And because the person worked in real estate, I tried to use an analogy that might help make some sense of it. If you are starting with a piece of land, you don't know what you want to build as soon as you get the land. You're going to have to do some due diligence and some studies, a feasibility study. And you may want to work with a series of experts, somebody who is assessing the soil, somebody who is assessing how much it will cost to build on the property. You may want to do some economic analysis to figure out what is the best piece of property I can build here. Would it be a high-rise building? Would it be a nuclear power plant? Would it be a grocery store? Would it be a parking garage? I mean, there are so many different variables that you just can't answer a question such as, what can I do to get out of prison at the earliest possible time? Why can't I answer that question? Well, I don't know whether the individual has even been charged yet. Because if he hasn't been charged, maybe he could be doing some mitigation work that would result in him not even going to prison by qualifying for a deferred prosecution agreement, or even better, a non-prosecution agreement. Since I don't know what stage of the journey this person is in, I don't know whether a non-prosecution agreement or a deferred prosecution agreement is even possible. Nor do I know if he has the ability to influence the way that prosecutors will charge him. Because there are many different ways that the prosecutors can bring a charge. They could bring a charge with a statutory minimum of 1 year. They could bring a statutory maximum, I should say, of 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or life, right? Those are very big variables. And depending on what the person is facing, it might influence the decision that he makes on how he moves forward with this criminal charge. He could plead guilty to a criminal information, to an indictment. He could go to trial and be found guilty by a jury. Again, big variables. Do you know the pathways that come depending on which way you go? Then if you've already been convicted, whether it's by a guilty plea or conviction by a jury, then what follows next? Has the person done his pre-sentence investigation report yet? Did he take steps to influence that pre-sentence investigation report in such ways that might influence how much time he spends in prison because of administrative possibilities, right? These are complexities that exist with anybody who's going into the criminal justice system. There's so much to know. I couldn't tell you what the best thing to do is unless I have more details. Fortunately, anybody can get those details. This is not proprietary information. Anybody who spends time on our website at Prison Investors is going to find an abundance of information for free, but the person has to be willing to educate himself and invest time and energy to learn, how does this system operate? Because even if the judge sentences the person to 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, the individual is going to want to be making some efforts to qualify for administrative relief, to get out at the soonest possible time, or to get the highest level of liberty at the soonest possible time. And again, the decisions that he makes at one stage in the journey are going to influence what opportunities open for him at a different stage of the journey. But I have news for anybody who's facing these kinds of challenges, and this is what I told the attorney, even though he works at a prestigious firm of Quinn Emanuel. there is a lot more to a criminal charge or conviction than just the sentence. There's reputational damage. There's earning and income possibilities. There's how is the world going to respond to you on the other side of these journeys? There's the collateral consequences of being fired by financial institutions or having your name dragged through the mud so that you could never look at a pretty girl again. I mean, there are so many different things that can happen. And if you don't prepare yourself well, you put yourself on this pathway of mental health complications and struggle. But if you move forward with the CEO mindset, well, then you can start architecting a plan. The same way that this real estate developer would have done if he inherited a piece of property. He perhaps would have contracted or worked with a feasibility study to figure out, hey, what's the highest and best use of this property? Then he would have worked with some architects and said, how are we going to design this to get the maximum value out of the square footage that we have available to us? Then he's going to work with real estate brokers to try and position the property to the best paying tenants, right? That's the way a successful real estate developer would go about his business. He's not going to start with the building by thinking about what kind of drapes he's going to hang on the 9th floor. Right? That's just not the pathway to success. And if somebody is going into the criminal justice system, that individual should start with an idea of what is the best possible outcome given the circumstances in my case. And it's very important to remember that it's never too early and it's never too late to start sowing seeds for a better life. Right now, there's a lot of people in the world that have to start sowing seeds for a better life because our world is in transition. We've got artificial intelligence coming on board. We've got robots coming on board. We've got disruption with blockchain and cryptocurrency. The world is changing just as this individual's life is changing who's going into the criminal justice system. But if he's lived in America and if he's working with Quinn Emanuel, the reality is that this person is going to have a very different life as soon as he is targeted or convicted or brought into the system. But it's not the end of life. There's always a path for more opportunities if the individual prepares himself well. Ask me how I know. I went to prison as a very young man. I was 20 years old when I made some really bad decisions that put my life on a bad trajectory. And I was arrested when I was 23. I spent my first year in solitary confinement, and a federal judge sentenced me to serve a 45-year sentence. But that wasn't the end of the story. The story goes on based upon the decisions that we make. And that is the situation for any of us. Any of us can make a life with complaining and talking about it's not fair and I'm a victim and it's somebody else's fault. But also any of us can make a decision to say, no, this is where I am, and I'm going to live in the world as it exists and not as I want it to be. Instead, I'm going to visualize how I want it to be and be more like Gandhi, who's going to say, how do I be the change that I want to see? What seeds do I have to sow today for the future that I want to build or enjoy in the weeks, months, years, and decades ahead? And how is every decision that I am making today putting me on a pathway to something better? That strategy is one that I would love to say that I came up with, but that wouldn't be accurate. I learned it from studying leaders. And I learned it while I was living in solitary confinement inside of a federal prison, staring down the long end of a 45-year prison sentence in a high-security penitentiary. The decisions that I made through that journey opened a series of opportunities. But every decision came with opportunity costs. It doesn't matter where you are in life. That is a universal factor. You make decisions today, and it puts you on a pathway for either prospects for success or puts you in the pathway for more struggle and crisis and difficulty. A lot of people in the world should be thinking today about the crisis and the changes that are coming. I'm very excited about it because there's always opportunity when there's crisis, even if you're going inside the criminal justice system. I would encourage anybody who's facing these challenges to access the free materials that we make available at Prison Professors. I always make 3 promises. I'm never going to lie to you. I'm never going to ask you to do anything I didn't do. And I'm never going to charge anybody a penny for any of the resources that we make available at Prison Professors, because this is part of my ministry to try and change this system in ways that will allow more people to work toward earning freedom through merit. Work your way to a better life. Regardless of where you are right now, you could always be working and climbing and building. And that might mean you have to build today, break tomorrow, build again the next day, build, but always be building. And always remember that there are more opportunities in the future than there are in the past. My name is Michael Santos, and I believe in you. So be cool.